Tumuning Vice Mayor Altovis' residency qualification for the job is shrouded under a cloud of allegations made by his family and his former political opponent, and an investigation by the Guam Election Commission that could not verify a question. Was Mr. Tovis living in Tumuning, Tumon, or Harmon for at least 1 year prior to his election in November 2020? Kandit, in studying the documents associated with this case, discovered Mr. Tovis was homeless during the year preceding his election. That will make him the only homeless person in the history of Guam elections to have been elected to office. Here's the backstory. On August 24, 2020, days prior to the primary election that year, Republican vice mayoral candidate Javier Attilig wrote a complaint to GEC Executive Director Maria Pangilinan alleging his Republican opponent, Al Tovis, was not a Tumuning Tumon Harmon resident for the 1-year time period allocated by law for a person to qualify as a candidate for that office. At the time, Tovis was employed as a maintenance worker for the Tumuning Tumon Harmon Mayor's office, according to Mayor Luis Rivera. Subsection 40108 of the Election Code found in Title V Guam Code annotated states in part, quote, each mayor and vice mayor candidate must be registered to vote in and have resided within the municipality or area which they are to represent for a period of 1 year immediately preceding the date of any special or general election at which they are candidates for election and shall continue to reside therein throughout their term of office, unquote. The general election of 2020 occurred on November 3 that year, which meant Mr. Tovis had to have been living in Tumuning, Tumon, or Harmon since at least November 2, 2019, in order to meet the residency requirement for the office of vice mayor. The law does not specify the candidate must have or rent a residence, or that he must receive mail or pay utilities, nor does the law prohibit homeless people from running for office. In Mr. Tovis' declaration of candidacy, he certified to the GEC that he met the residency requirement. His affidavit of voter registration, which he signed and submitted in 2008, declares his residence, at least in 2008, was 130 Tun Jose Tovis Way, which is a small street behind National Office Supply in Tumuning. The number of the address is believed to be incorrect as it does not exist. There is a residential address 129 Tun Jose Tovis Way. The house belonged to Mr. Tovis' father, Juan Tovis, who died in 2020. Mr. Attilig, in his complaint, alleged Al Tovis did not live at that home and sent to the GEC a lease between Al Tovis' brother, Anthony Tovis, and Bome Solomon. Ms. Solomon was Juan Tovis' live-in caretaker. She and her family leased the home according to the lease from April 2019 through March 2020. They lived there with Juan Tovis until he died. According to Al Tovis' other brother, Mark Tovis, Al Tovis was not living at 129 Jose Tovis Way while Miss Solomon was living there. He has since inhabited the home, though it is unclear when in 2020 Al Tovis moved there. Quote, Bome can attest that Al Tovis didn't reside at 129 Tovis Street, Tumuning, until sometime in March 2020 after she and her family had moved out. Mr. Attilig's complaint to Ms. Pangilinan states, quote, the GEC does not conduct physical verification of voters or candidates' residential addresses, but instead relies on the statements under oath Ms. Pangilinan wrote to Al Tovis in a September 18 confidential letter closing out her investigation in 2020. She and the GEC determined that based on statements Al Tovis made to her, he met the residency qualifications. Quote, GEC initiated a confidential investigation to determine the veracity of Mr. Attilig's claims that Al Tovis was not living in Tumuning, Tumon, or Harmon since at least November 2, 2019. Part of that investigation included Ms. Pangilinan speaking with Al Tovis himself. Notes of that conversation, which were disclosed to Kandit by the GEC, indicated where Al Tovis was living prior to moving into his father's home sometime after March 2020. The notes read, quote, I asked him where he has lived since November 2, 2019. Telecon with Mr. Albert Tovis notes reads, Mr. Tovis replied that he was living at the Tumuning Senior Center and would sometimes go to his friend's house, Mr. Paul Untalon, on Ipaw Road. On March 2020, he moved to his dad's house and has been living there since, unquote. According to 107 pages of documents provided by the GEC, his whereabouts for the months preceding April 2020, the approximate time he moved into his father's home in Tumuning, are unknown except for his statements to Ms. Pangilinan. Kandit then asked his employer at the time, whether his account checks out. Okay.
Sometimes in his car, sometimes at the center, sometimes at different people's homes. They opened up their homes to him.
Okay, but
So he won't be out.
was it all in Tamuning? Far be it for us to judge his situation, right? But just as long,
Right.
was it all in Tamuning?
I believe majority of it was because he was working for me. He
Okay.
was maintenance.
Yes,
He
yes.
ran. And and then of course when even the our vice mayor Ken Sanchez got very sick, Albert was the one that was doing a lot of the duties. As he was maintenance, but there was a lot of times where he had to step up and assist me.
Okay.
And so, of course, we're here till late at night, early in the morning. I freak out sometimes when I find out that he just slept here, I've also had other families that have stayed here.
Are you able to vouch that since November of 2019, from November 2019 to the time that he actually did move over to his parents' house, that he was regularly staying at the Tamuning Senior Center or otherwise somewhere in Tamuning, Tumon, or Harmon?
That was what was brought up to me, and I know that he was in the area because every time I called on him, he was available. But I don't know what house he slept at or where exactly he was. But he was always at the center, cooking coffee early in the morning, and then he stayed with us all the time late at night when we were setting up or having meetings, town meetings. Of course, our operations is till 10 o'clock at night here at the compound.
Yeah.
The recreation, the gym, everything. We were operating till 10 o'clock at night all the time.
So you're not able to personally vouch for his living situation at the time, but you believe that he was staying in Tamuning, Tumon, Harmon.
Yes, I can vouch for that. I mean, again, our showers, we have showers in the gym and in the center.
The question of where Al Tovis lived when he said he was residing at the Tamuning Senior Citizen Center continues to baffle his brother, Mark Tovis, who believes Al Tovis may have been living in Deredo with a relative, Barbara Lanata. Mr. Atzelik made the same allegation in his complaint to the GEC, stating Al Tovis was residing at a home behind UR Market in Deredo. Ms. Pangilinan also contacted Ms. Lanata, who denied on the phone and via email that Al Tovis lived with her during the one-year period. The GEC did not investigate the matter beyond those conversations, and Al Tovis went on to qualify, then win election to become the vice mayor of the municipality. As for his performance thus far as vice mayor of Tamuning, Tumon, and Harmon, Mr. Rivera believes Al Tovis is doing a great job. Kandit has asked the Republican Party of Guam for a statement about the significance of a member of its party being elected vice mayor of a municipality during a time he essentially was homeless. The party often is cast in mainstream media as being inattentive to issues involving the homeless or insensitive to the plight of poor people. Juan Carlos Benitez, the party chairman, has not yet responded to our request for comment. According to the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, there were 790 homeless people roaming the streets of Guam as of January 2020, the latest count. That number accounts for those whom society typically identifies as homeless, people without homes or a place to stay and who dwell outdoors in abandoned private dwellings or on and in public facilities. There is, however, a larger number of people considered homeless who are sheltered, at least at night. Vice Mayor Tovis fit into that category prior to his occupancy of his father's home in Tamuning. Thank you for joining us here at Kandit News tonight. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres.
And I'm Johnny Rosario.
Good night.